the specific rates of excise duty for a number of products by 10%.
He, however, excluded petroleum products from this increment. It is a big blow to the over 1.2 million boda and tuk-tuk riders who will now be required to take insurance covers for their passengers.
I propose to amend the insurance regulations to require motorcycles and three-wheelers used by fare-paying passengers to take insurance for their passengers.
The media, brewers and gaming companies have also been slapped with an excise duty of 15% on advertisements for alcoholic beverages, betting and gaming activities to discourage the promotion of these products and activities.
I propose to amend the insurance regulations to require motorcycles and three-wheelers used by fare-paying passengers to take insurance for their passengers.
The CS proposed changes in the taxation regime for liquid nicotine used to make e-cigarettes, noting that the design of these products and their taxation regime makes them easily accessible to users including school children and the youth.
I propose to change the taxation regime for liquid nicotine from current shilling per unit to an excise duty of shilling 70 per milliliter.
Expatriates will also be taxed gains made from financial derivatives. Caroline Jenga for Prime Edition.
Well, let's now talk about election matters, where the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission will receive approximately 21 billion shillings to enable it conduct the August elections.
Treasury CS Ukur Yatani says the 21 billion shillings will be an addition to the 22 billion shillings allocated in the current financial year, which completes the 40.9 billion request by IEBC.
In August last year, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, pleaded with Treasury to allocate it additional funds to enable it conduct a credible election this year. IEBC claimed it had a 14 billion shillings deficit to its budget. Thursday, Treasury CS Ukur Yatani gave the electoral body a shot in the arm with a 21.9 billion shillings allocation in the upcoming financial year.
Mr. Speaker, in order to facilitate the 2022 general elections, we allocated Kenya shilling 22.9 billion in the current financial year 2021-2022, and I further propose an allocation of Kenya shilling 21.7 billion in the financial year 2022-2023 to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission.
Added to the 8 billion shillings allocated to the IEBC through a supplementary budget signed by President Uhuru Kenyatta earlier in the week, the electoral body now appears to have hit the target of what it says is a bare minimum of the funds required to conduct a credible election. Perhaps in anticipation of petitions emanating from the elections, the CS has allocated the judiciary an extra 5 billion shillings in the next financial year, putting its total allocation at 18 billion shillings.
To enhance the oversight and legislative role of Parliament and access to justice, I propose an allocation of Kenya shilling 50.2 billion to Parliament and Kenya shilling 18.9 billion to the judiciary.
Ahead of the elections, the security sector was the biggest winner of the attorney's purse with an allocation of 317.8 billion shillings.
The security of our nation remains paramount and must be maintained to safeguard the considerable development gains. For this reason, I have proposed an allocation of Kenya shilling 317.8 billion to support operations of the National Police Service, Defense and the National Intelligence Services. Mr. Speaker, the proposed allocations include Kenya shilling 128.4 billion for Defense, Kenya shilling 46.4 billion for the National Intelligence Service, and Kenya shilling 122.2 billion for Police and Prison Service, Kenya shilling 10.7 billion for leasing of police motor vehicles, and Kenya shilling 1 billion for police modernization program.
John Jacob Curia, Prime Edition.
The Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani now says the 2022-23 budget was formulated with the interest of the common man in mind.
Yatani, who spoke in Parliament after delivering the 3.3 trillion shillings budget, said issues such as regularization of high cost of living will be addressed under the proposals in the budget.
Waziri wetu amesidikishwa na wakuu.
7th April, the date set for budget reading, would see focus turn to Parliament buildings as Kenyans sought to understand how the 2022-2023 budget would affect them amid concerns of high cost of living. Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani taking time to simplify the over 3 hours budget amid cries that the government resolves the skyrocketing cost of living.
Kenyans are concerned about the cost of living, and we effectively address this. We've addressed the issue of fuel prices, where we'll be subsidizing substantially. We've been subsidizing for the last few months, and we will continue to do it until end of June, just to make sure that the prices does not go out of reach for the common man. One very important aspect is that we are aware that food security remains a key concern for us, and that's why we have already allocated resources to fertilizer, and we have proposed further allocation of 2.7 billion in the next financial year. In this financial year, last week we've allocated 3 billion Kenya shilling, and we intend to allocate additional resources of 2.7 billion for the fertilizer to enable farmers to plant their crops in good time, to enable farmers assess, because the price has been rising as a result of global issues which is beyond the confines of this country.
Amid concerns over an ailing economy, the CS claimed the 2.4 trillion shillings revenue collection is achievable despite the current prevailing economic times.
It will be the revenue projection that we are going to raise from the finance bill. My estimation is about 50 billion. And all of them does not touch basic commodities. They are in the luxury items. Issue of cigarettes, issue of gambling, advertisement on gambling, gaming, betting, and all these. It will give us a net revenue of about estimated 50 billion. Nothing on basic commodities were touched in terms of tax raises.
The ministry further absolved the government of blames on the pending bills, claiming some counties have been returning unused monies to Treasury. Yatani further claimed that all the processes and documentation was followed before the presentation of the country's next financial year's budget. For Prime Edition, I'm Gladys Mungai.
It's a busy year for national teams. The Sports and Social Development Fund has received an allocation of 15.8 billion shillings, 35% of which will go towards sports.
Well, in addition, an allocation of 125 million shillings has been made for maintaining regional stadia.
The sports sector in Kenya will receive 5.645 billion shillings for the next financial year.
It's a privilege for me to present to this August House.
While presenting the budget at the National Assembly, Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani says the funds will be channeled through the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund, which will receive 15.8 billion shillings. According to the Public Finance Management Regulations, 60% of the fund goes to social development, 5% to the arts, and up to 35% to sports, bringing the actual allocation to 5.53 billion shillings.
To further support sports development and tourism recovery, I have proposed an allocation of Kenya shilling 15.8 billion for the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund, Kenya shilling 3.2 billion for the Tourism Fund, Kenya shilling 1.8 billion for Tourism Promotion Fund, and Kenya shilling 125 million for refurbishment of the regional stadium.
The allocation for sports will fund national team activities at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, England, and the World Athletics Championships in Oregon, USA, the Africa Youth Games in Cairo, Egypt, and the management of sports facilities across the country. Sports events hosted in the country, such as the WRC Safari Rally and the Magical Kenya Open, are also catered for from the fund. For Prime Edition, I am Daniel Wahome.
And you're watching the Prime Edition. We are live from Broadcasting House, and of course we're also online. My Twitter handle is @O'Brien Kimani.
And mine is Cynthia Nyamai. We will be taking a short break, and after this, Expect Brian O'Brien with an interview.
Oh, absolutely. Stay right here.
Have an opportunity working with the incoming president of COP13, His Excellency Rachmat Witoela, here in Bali, to take decisions which will save the environment and save the planet Earth for future generations. We should all rise up to the occasion.
You've done me a great
Kubuniwa kwa ajenda 4 kuu na Rais Uhuru Kenyatta kumeifanya nchi ikashuhudia maendeleo kwa kasi zaidi.
This is an agenda that has a single aim: to improve the lives of Kenyans by ensuring that all of us are food secure, that we have a decent roof over our heads, and that everyone has access to affordable health care, and that more jobs are created in the manufacturing sector.
Kaunti ya jiji la Nakuru imesonga mbele kwa miradi mbalimbali inayotagusana na the Big Four, zikiwemo afya, ujenzi, uzalishaji na sekta ya uchukuzi.
I'm very much comfortable the way I am. Very much comfortable.
As times changes, technologies grow, and so you need to be in the know. We bring you tech news from all over the world.
Me, I understand science revolves around life.
Tech policies and programs. Take on Tech has your back. Coming to your screens every Saturday at 4:30 p.m. only on KBC Channel 1. Join me, Stephanie Ayeta and Grace Givaga as we serve you with only the best tech updates the world over.
Do you have a news story to share with KBC? Get in touch swiftly on email news@kbc.co.ke or call 0723-892-654 or 0734-780-124.
Well, and after many months of waiting, finally, the budget highlights were outlined today by National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ambassador Ukur Yatani. As it would be expected in any budget, there were losers and gainers, and of course, there were reactions from different quarters, and the reactions were varied. And let's now come back to the studio, and I'm now joined by Jim McPhee. He's a regular face on KBC. He's a senior lecturer of economics at Strathmore Business School. Hujambo bwana?
Jambo sana.
Karibu sana.
Sawa, asante.
Very good. And next to Jim McPhee, we're joined by Anne Magondu. She's a senior manager tax at Ernst & Young. Thank you, Anne, and karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Very well. And I want to start with you. What did you pick from Yatani's budget highlights?
Right. Looking at it from maybe a tax perspective, I would say you really tried to balance because we really didn't see so much of hikes in terms of the taxes we pay. So in my mind, I'm thinking that there is a strategy that now the KRS will take to ensure that the target they have been given of 2.2 billion is achievable. Trillions, yeah, sorry, yeah, it's achievable. Yeah.
And I mean, she's talking about KRS. She's actually ahead of time. KRS is what we know as Kenya Revenue Authority. I mean, the KRA Act is going to be amended so that it's transitioned from an authority to a service. What about you? What did you pick from the budget highlights?
You know, first of all, I was very, very impressed with Honourable Yatani. You know, I think he made a very, very good presentation. And at the end, he had a press conference, and I think he was very, very erudite. He really came across as a person who knows what he's doing, and his permanent secretary had the same view. You know, you realise that the economy of the country is in safe hands, really, at the moment. And we hope that, you know, after August, it's going to be in safe hands as well. I would agree with Anne. I feel that it was a very moderate thing. All right, we have this increase. It's going to be obviously, when we talk about excise duty, it could be something like Pepsi Cola or Coca-Cola. Let's hope it's not going to be on Tusker, okay? But you know, again, we don't know what it is. But I think we've got to understand, actually, you know, one of the concerns that everyone has right at the moment is, you know, what can the government do for the common 1 inchie? And I think, you know, we've got to understand that it's beyond the power of the government to do much. You know, at the moment we have this subsidy which has been given by the government for petrol. That's really good. But you see, on April the 20th, 2 years ago, that is almost exactly 2 years from now, West Texas Intermediate was trading at minus $40 a barrel.
Yes.
Because there was so much oil coming across from Saudi Arabia and so on, that, you know, you actually had to pay to get that oil offloaded into the tanks, which were already full. So it then went back to about $40 a barrel. A year ago it was $68 a barrel. I checked the oil price right at this moment. Brent crude is trading at $100 a barrel. So that's the first thing. You've got to remember that everything in Kenya, for example, we import, well, it's difficult to know, because if you look at the numbers given by the CIA, they're meant to know everything in the world, but they don't actually, you know. But the number more or less is, let's say we import 600,000 tons of wheat. It's got to be taken from Mombasa to Nairobi and distributed up country. And also, so number one, it's going to cost us more to do that. KPA has put up their handling charge by 20% just a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
And then also, because of the shortage of vessels on the high seas at the moment, transport costs, bringing, let's say, the wheat, we used to buy a little bit more than 30% of our wheat from Russia, 1.63% from Ukraine. A lot of people say, well, you know, we used to buy our wheat from Ukraine. In fact, we bought very much from Russia. But the problem is, we won't be able to do that now. So we're going to have to pay more for our wheat. It means that it's very difficult. And then we have, you know, the rate of exchange at the moment is 115 shillings and 30 cents to the dollar. So our currency is sliding. The dollar is actually appreciating against all the major currencies in the world, so we shouldn't be worried about that.
Yep.
But it means that the imported item is going to cost us more. And this is where it's very difficult. You know, we can say, well, it's the government doing this. No, it is the international economy which has got us in that particular position.
And all things that is happening out there would definitely have an impact, you know, on the local economy.
Correct.
I'll be coming back to you to understand how much this is likely to complicate Kenya's economic projection of 5.6%, you know, going forward. But I want to hear this from the CS, left everyone guessing, probably maybe apart from him, by saying that, some goods are likely to be slapped with a 10% excise duty. He was short of telling people what exactly are things, and he's keeping everyone guessing. What are you guessing? What is your guess telling you?
Oh yeah, I think with the other Kenyans, I might not really read his mind. But looking at what are the products that attract excise duty, we expect so much to go in the drinks. Yeah, likely. But as he said,
so you're breaking his heart, eh?
Yeah, definitely. Even water, the bottled water, we have excise duty on it.
Exactly.
So we expect that will go up. But maybe just to also talk more on the fuel prices. Yeah, he was so much impressing the people that the government is giving subsidies, but he's not telling us that we are paying tax on it. For me, it's like giving with one hand, you're taking the other. Right now, you're paying VAT. VAT was introduced on our fuel prices back in 2018. Then come 2021, they also increased the tax base for VAT on fuel by including excise duty. Meaning the VAT you're paying right now on your fuel has an element of excise duty. You can imagine the multiplier effect on that. So I would have imagined, or I would have expected that instead of the subsidies, we have the direct impact to the mwananchi pocket, where you tell us VAT has been slashed on fuel and the price goes down. Or LPG again, no VAT. That will have had a direct impact than going through the long chain of the supply chain of the marketers. Yeah.
But if you were to lower the tax base or the VAT base on fuel and gas, don't you think this is likely to blow the Kenya Revenue Authority a huge tax hole?
Not really, for a fact. Look, we're collecting revenue to spend as a government. Yeah, look at it now from a broader perspective, and I still feel that now KRS also has other avenues to collect more taxes. We talk of numbers. Right now, we're in an election year. We are talking of close to 22 million registered voters. Look at the taxpayers we have in Kenya. They're only 2 million, I think less than 15% of the registered voters. So there's a lot of field that KRA can engage and bring in more revenues. Just imagine if you were to grow that rate from 15%, and maybe have like 30% of registered voters paying taxes. I mean, even the budget deficit will narrow down.
But I mean,
I would like to pick that up, because I think one of the things, a lot of people are talking about expanding the tax, the tax bracket, and we want to have more people paying tax. But that's precisely what VAT was all about. When I was working in Ernst & Young, the top rate of income tax in Kenya was 70%.
70?
I remember actually going out to lunch with one of the partners there. I'd done a good job. He gave me a lunch, and I sort of offered to pay the lunch. It was on a restaurant which no longer exists on Koinange Street. But he said, look, KRA are going to pay 70% of this. It's because they will put it in as one of the expenses of the firm. So, you see, our top rate of income tax at the moment is 30%. How can it be 30% when in those days it was 70%? Because we pay VAT. So VAT is an expenditure tax. So when we're thinking about expanding the tax net, we're already doing that with VAT. And this is where I must say, I feel that, okay, when you buy your petrol here in Nairobi, you're going to pay less than you would in Dar es Salaam, almost the same price in Kigali, in Rwanda, and the petrol has got to go right around the whole of Lake Victoria up to Rwanda. Nowadays it's going through Dar es Salaam because our people in Mombasa are saying, tunataka pumzika hapa, and the problem is this pumzika mentality is getting into the minds of everyone here. But, so you'll pay more in Nairobi than you will in Dar, Kampala, and also even in Kigali. But I think, this is something everyone has got to pay their tax. And so instead of the MPs talking about, you got to tax Tom, Dick, and we know, okay, out there. In fact, they're in the tax bracket because the moment they buy anything which is manufactured,
they're paying indirect tax.
Exactly. So I must say, you see, you got to remember, when I was studying for my PhD, I was paying £1.30 for a gallon of a litre of petrol in the UK. Translate that into Kenyan terms. That is almost 200 shillings a litre. So here we are at 134.70. This is the end of the world and so on. Look, those people who are paying that price can well afford to do so.
Well, I'm not sure, but Anne was talking about, she was trying, we were trying to create, to do what we call scenario creation here, and she was talking about one of the things that she expect to see rise in excise duty is water. What else would you guess? Fuel? Do you think fuel is likely?
No, that has been exempted. He said it expressly that petroleum products will be exempt, so that will not go up. But look at the external pressure. What he's just talking about, the pricing, the external price. So when the fuel lands in Mombasa, it will have a higher price, right? Then use that base to calculate taxes. So that again grows, yeah? The same, they will subsidize the marketers, but now looking at the tax calculation way of doing it, inevitably you might find the price going up.
The price going up, the prices of petrol.
Yes.
Help me understand things. We've seen the Kenya Meteorological Department this evening issue a warning that we are likely to be in a more drier season, despite the fact that we are supposed to be, welcoming or celebrating the long rains. And so this means that we are going to be in an elongated drought, going forward. And so this is likely to have a major impact on agriculture. So when the CS talks about an economic growth of 5.6%, where is this growth coming from?
It's going to come from prayers. Because, I was out yesterday actually because I like planting trees, and I was out watering the trees that I planted. I've got about a dozen trees, and wow, it's so dry out there. And I was talking to a person who runs these flower farms up in Eldoret and also Nakuru, and even there it's very, very dry. And when I was out yesterday, we had some rain a week ago, and it was quite good rain. And I thought it would sort of be, it was the beginning of the rain, and when the rain starts early, it's normally very good. But boy, we're just back to this drought situation. So that's why I say, let's just hope and pray that we get the rain, because, let's face it, 30% of our GDP in Kenya comes from agriculture.
Yeah.
And we have the price of coffee internationally at the moment. In Brazil, they had, first of all, when they were quite badly hit by COVID, so that really meant that they weren't able to harvest their crop in Brazil. Then they were hit by a frost, and then they were hit by a drought. So, and then now, in fact, in some of the places in Brazil, they've got floods. So the international price of coffee is very good at the moment.
Yep.
Egypt came into the market. They seem to want to buy a lot of tea in preparation for Ramadan. They had a very big contract that pushed the price of tea up. And so our tea is very, very important. And over in Western Kenya, I know some people lost tea because there was a lack of rain. So, that's why we really, this 5.6% depends really on getting that rain for our agriculture. And it's so important for the small man. And if we do get that rain, you see, avocado, Kenya a couple of years ago was the largest avocado exporter in Africa. We were, in fact, ahead of South Africa.
Yep.
They overtook us again last year, and then also macadamia nuts is a thing which a lot of people are getting into in Kenya. China's actually stopped their import of macadamia nuts from Australia because the Australian politicians are blah, blah, blah against the Chinese. So coal, corn, anything Australian now is just
it's not welcome in Beijing.
It's not getting exactly. So we've got to move. You know, the thing is that we're just somehow we got to be aware of the fact that all these opportunities are there. So providing we get good rain, we've really got to try to make the most of it, you know.
He's talking about rainfall, and it's true. I mean, you know, when you look at the Kenyan economy, I mean, it's 35%, you know, supported by agriculture.
Correct.
So this also being an election year, and we know for sure that during every election cycle, there's always that boom and bust kind of a cycle. Is this likely to complicate this economic growth going forward?
Likely, and of course I'll join Prof in the prayers that we get the rain because we need it. He was speaking of trees. I also planted some grass somewhere. I have to water. You know, we expected rain. It's not coming forth. We need it. We don't have food. So many other things are affected. First of all, you don't even have an energetic citizen to work, right? Then look at now at what happens. Food, raw materials for some of the manufacturing plants. So again, they'll maybe be required to import. What does that take our cost of living? Prices again go up, you see? So definitely it will affect the economic growth. Yeah, not forgetting the politics of the day. Yeah, you see, we're trying to get leaders and then proceed with our agenda for the day. And also there's also related cost to it, right? So this again, the amount that maybe would have been used for development is taken for politics. So yeah, there will be a huge dip.
And she's actually now bringing me to the other point, because you know, look, we're going to spend a whole 40 billion shillings on elections, and yet we've allocated 7 billion shillings to subsidize agriculture input. Why have we put our priorities right?
Look, O'Brien, this is exactly why this concept of democracy, there's a Professor Joe Kimura at the University of Nairobi, and I think it was about 9 years ago, he wrote an article and said, you know, look, this thing of democracy is 3,000 years old. I think we better have a look at it again. But you know, this style of democracy that we are brainwashed to buy that organization called the BBC and, you know, and all the rest of it, we're just brainwashed all the time. Well, democracy, we're democratic, blah, 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 blah. Democracy, that Western form of democracy does not work in the United States, it doesn't work in the UK, and it doesn't work in the whole of Africa. So Professor Joe Kimura is absolutely right. We got to look at this. There's a Professor David Some up in Eldoret. He was very high up in the University of Eldoret. He's a doctor by profession, a lecturer at the university, Moore University in Eldoret. But he got all the elders of the 12 groups in the Kalenjin. They were all sort of squabbling with one another. He got them all together. He got them, now let's work together. That's what we need in Kenya. Forget about this thing called democracy. Democracy is rubbish.
No, you can't say that on screen.
Yes, you know, and we got to tell the Americans to their face, look, you know, don't impose democracy on us.
Let me ask you this, because I can see you are getting worked up. I don't want you to get worked up on screen. But honestly speaking, I mean, what would be the alternative? Because, you know, for such a poor country, you know, to spend 40 billion shillings on an event that will take probably maybe 1 or 2 or 3 days. Anne, what are your feelings on this?
Well,
what can we do with 40 billion shillings, for example, if it was put into agriculture, for example?
We'll really harvest a lot. We'll, transform our economy to a very large extent, yeah? And as you rightly put it, in addition to the 40 billion, you may expect petitions, all over. That now goes to spending time for the judiciary, the lawyers. I mean, it will have such a huge impact in terms of the overall cost to the economy. Yeah, and as he has put it, I mean, we may need to change how we view politics. I know we are a developing country, but we do really admire other developed countries.
You admire which country?
Let's not get into so much politics, but of course...
Even the election in the United States was rigged.
Look, I mean, we know that our politics are very expensive because, and of late we have become highly litigious, as a society. When you also throw in the cost of investors who are going to wait and see whether we are going to fight or not, then that is likely to complicate things. And because we are deep in it, how then do we get out of this hole?
By following the advice of Professor Joe Kimura.
That we review our political systems.
Exactly. There was a time when President Mwai Kibaki sent the whole of his cabinet home. Did Kenya collapse? In fact, it worked better than when we had all of those.
2005.
Correct.
After the banana orange rift.
So the situation there, is, but it's a difficult thing. But what I feel is, I think you hit that nail on the head, O'Brien. We're spending so much money, and let's face it, if I want to get elected, I remember once in one of the companies where I'm a director, we were interviewing 3 people, and they were so good, these 3 men, that one of them, I remember, I gave him 20 out of 20 in the interview, and we actually employed that man. Now, this is to run the finances of a company. It has 1,000 employees. Mm-hmm. To run a country, who decides? Here in Nairobi, if I want to be the governor of Nairobi, I won't come and talk to the University of Nairobi and KU and JKU where do I go? Kibera, Mathari Valley, Korogosho slums, Sinai slums. Mm-hmm. That's where the money is.
Because that's where you have the masses.
Exactly. So who decides who's going to be the next president of Kenya? Is it the people of Nairobi? The people who, the economics department of the University of Nairobi? Are they the people who... I remember 20 years ago I was in Nigeria at the Lagos Business School, and they were going through an election. And these people were saying, these politicians never come and speak to us, And I said, look, first of all, if these politicians come here, they'll speak to 100 people. Not only that, they'll be challenged by 95. You're saying this doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. You can go to the slums and you speak to 5,000, and they all, you give them a little thing. Here's our man.
The other thing, when I get your point, it is high time that we sit back, but look at our political processes and ask ourselves,
Absolutely.
Should we be paying these high costs, for our politics? But that's an issue that's supposed to be dealt with by politicians. But let's also look at another thing. We are going to spend 1.2 trillion shillings on recurrent expenditure, that is paying workers, the per diems and so much.
Well, it's even more than that, actually.
It is actually more than that. Yeah. What are your figures telling you?
It's 2,174 billion.
Well, that's on the wage bill?
Sorry, not on wages.
No, I'm talking about...
wages. Yes.
Yeah, I'm talking about the wage bill.
Yeah.
It's going to be 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings.
Yeah.
And for a country that is expecting to collect about 2.2 trillion Kenya shillings, whereby 1.2 will go into the recurrent expenditure, and then you have debt repayment of about almost 1 trillion Kenya shillings. What do we really need to do, to bring down, the recurrent expenditure in this country? Because we need to set aside so much for development.
Okay. Well, I think there requires to be a very good guiding framework in terms of revenue expenditure. Because even if you look at it from a household perspective, if you borrow to spend on revenue expenditure, you not grow. You stifle yourself. Mm-hmm. You cannot have debt on consumables, yeah? So as stakeholders, as Kenyans, this is a wake-up call, yeah? It's all our responsibility to contribute towards managing the rise in the recurrent expenditure, because we shall not grow. We shall not grow. We have so much development to undertake.
Jim, and I think, I agree with Anne here. When we are spending as a country, and when you look at our recurrent expenditure, I mean, it has grown from, it has actually doubled, in the last 10 years. I remember sometimes in 2012, the government was talking about cutting down the wage bill, which was back then about 600 billion shillings. Now we're talking about 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings. Have we ever taken stock of how much value we generate, by investing 1.2 trillion shillings in the recurrent expenditure?
Well, the answer is no. The answer is no. And you see, it's kama kawaida too, So we got to understand, well, number one, let me just say, in our budget this year, we actually are aiming to have a surplus on recurrent expenditure of 230 billion. But the biggest item of expenditure this year is going to be interest on debt, which is going to be 688 billion shillings.
Interest on
debt. Interest. Not repayment, just purely interest. And that's going to rise to 712 billion next year. And the year after that, it's going to be 758 billion. And the year after that, it's going to be 796 billion. But we hope that the economy is going to grow. And that's, let's face it, you see, that depends on each one of us, actually. Because I think, Anne, you brought up the problem is that the average Kenyan is a thief.
You cannot generalize people.
I'm a thief, Anne is a thief, and O'Brien, if we were talking the truth, you would be a thief as well.
Are you ready to be sued?
I shouldn't have made, he was telling us about law in the beginning. So, but this is one thing, because I have past students who start up a hustle, and it's closed down. In this year alone, I've spoken to 2 people. They started up a side hustle. These people were selling their own goods instead of selling this lady's goods, okay? And then at the end of the day, she's paying rent, she's paying them a salary. What have your sales been today? We haven't managed to sell anything. So, that's, and then also another man, he actually has got 60 chickens, and the man looking after them would bring 2 eggs. And he said, well, I don't know what happens with these chickens. They're not laying eggs or something. But anyway, but I think, you see, somehow we've got to get away from our status symbol. I was talking to a man in a company today at noon, and he's actually from Mauritius. He works in a very big bank in Mauritius, okay? And there, the chief executive officer has a driver. He's working in Kenya. All of the senior managers need a driver, so that when I'm going to the KICC, for example, I'm actually driven to the front door, I get out of the left back door, and my driver then goes away with the vehicle to some other place. Now, admittedly, we're giving employment to people by that, but this is something that I know. Sometimes I'm with Honourable Bunyasi. He's an MP. He's got to have a driver. He's got to have a huge car. Okay, if he isn't, the wananchi watukufu will say this man is bure. Let him go home. So we're forced to be big spenders, and then we don't realize that. I try to get people to understand. Look, lights, we got to turn off the lights, okay? But people, the day begins, the sun is shining into the building, the lights are on. The lights are on to indicate that we're here. But now, wait a minute, we don't even need the lights.
Tell me this. I also listened to the CS, saying that we are going to invest 400 billion shillings to the devolved units, what we call the county government.
Yeah.
When you look at the amount of money or the amount of resources that the government or we as a country have deployed to the county government, since the devolution governance, came into force back in the year 2012, 2013. Do you believe that we are getting value for this investment?
Well, maybe I would go by 50-50. Yes, 50, no 50. And why I say this is because irrespective of the money going to the counties, you've seen a lot of intervention by the national government. So there could be a likelihood of duplication of the same thing. You see, we already funded you to do ABC, but we still need our assistance in one way or another. Mm-hmm. So I think, we need to get back to the drawing board. I think we need to do an audit of what you've achieved in the last, or rather 10 more years we've been under devolution. Do an audit and see actually what have we achieved. I remember when this issue of devolution came in, the Kenyans were very excited. And you're saying now development is coming to the villages, there'll be jobs here. No, there'll be services, facilities here. But I think we are yet to get there. Mm-hmm. We are yet to get there.
Jim, when you look at our current setup of two-tier government, whereby you have the county government, you have the national government, and every year the government or more billions of shillings, are deployed to the county government, to help in service delivery, to help in poverty alleviation and so much, to help in job creation and so much. Would you say that we have gotten value for our investment in counties?
Well, let me ask you a question. I know you're asking me a question, but let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. Who was the person who held up this new constitution that we have on August the 10th, 2010, was it?
It was the former president, Mwai Kibaki.
And at one stage, he had sent all of his ministers home.
In 2005.
And we now have 2,500 MCAs. If we had a Senate the size of the United States Senate, we would have 1/5 of the number. We have 47 counties, 47 governments, 47 groups of people who sit there getting a salary which is much better than any person working at the University of Nairobi, You have a governor, you have,
a deputy.
All of this, a deputy, etc. And then we have
county executive committee members.
We have now 349 members of parliament as opposed to our 200. Now, Mr. Honourable Kibaki, is there a possibility that you've gone wrong? Because I asked myself, I remember...
Well, that was not Kibaki's document. It was a document that was voted by Kenyans through a referendum, right?
Yeah, because... And who are the Kenyans? Korogosho, Mathari Valley.
Well, I'm sure if you went to Muthaiga as well, there were people there who voted
yeah,
for
but
the
look, the people in Muthaiga were probably drinking champagne when people were voting. So, but now, why I say this actually is that there's Professor Ruth Kiraka who's done a study with a team of people from Strathmore Business School, and they've spoken to the women in the counties. They are unhappy. They are just totally unhappy with the county governments because the amount of nepotism there is incredible. And, you're meant to give government to the people so that, if I don't like what's going on, I'm going to come and tell you because you're right here. You're not sitting in Nairobi in an office in, opposite Parliament. But is that the reality on the ground? Because, an economist is not a guy who reads a book and gets a first-class honours degree at the University of Nairobi, which, some of us have got, and, those are clever people. But that clever people wrote teach, increase the price of Senator beer from 20 shillings a glass to 40 shillings, and it almost killed that particular liquor. So, these are people who have I've got a first-class honours from the London School of Economics. Well, you don't know what you're talking about because you do something, what you say and what you do are two different things.
So, because here we are, we are deep in it, and I was just going through the Commission for Revenue Allocation, the report, and it has always complained about that. Look, the investment in terms of the capital investment, at the county government, at the county level, is less than 10% of what they are given, and yet it's supposed to be 35%. So how do we then make county government, engines of growth going forward?
Wow, that's not an easy question to answer because it all depends with the team that takes over the county as leaders, yeah. And just as what Prof has said, yeah, look at how these people come to the office. They come with numbers, my people, you see? My people. So the issue of development might be left to the periphery to impress my people. Mm-hmm. You find, maybe you hire the whole clan to pay back. You get me? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the structure maybe has to change. The numbers are huge. The people who are manning our counties are so many. I think we need to reduce those offices because within a village you'll find, I would say, a semi-god as a county representative somehow. Mm-hmm. Instead of delivering the service, they want to take the seat to be served, right? So we really have a challenge. This has to change. And I think mindset again of the leaders, we who are vying to become our leaders, they need to look at the larger good for everyone, including the young ones who don't even know what is happening right now in our country. Mm-hmm. Because in the few years to come, they'll be grown-ups and they'll get into problems we are facing.
Very well.
Yeah.
Because in the interest of time, I mean, we have to put this. We have to stop at some point. But I also want to hear from you. Amending the Insurance Act, to force border riders or border owners, to buy insurance covers for their passengers. For such an industry that operates with no regulations, how are we going to enforce this? And is that a right move from the National Treasury?
Well, I think, you brought up a very good point because, if you're going to introduce a law, how are you going to make sure that law is obeyed? And, let's be practical about it. Are you going to have the police? I always feel that the work of the police is to keep the traffic moving. Mm-hmm. And very often, they do exactly the opposite. Okay, and one of the reasons why Uganda a couple of months ago actually imported more goods through Tanzania than through Kenya, and we've got to remember we can lose our position very, very easily, is because of the number of police who are working on the northern corridors, they call it, okay, from Mombasa through to Kampala. Mm-hmm. So, to my mind, this is just going to enable the police to have another thing that they can hold over the border riders. Mm-hmm. And my own experience is, the police have control over cars. They don't have control over border riders. And, So
would that regulation be easy to implement?
No. The answer is no. And what is the result of it? The result is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? I know I used to ride a motorbike when I was young and I had to have insurance, but that was for myself. But maybe, if I want to have insurance for my motorbike, what I've got to do is I've got to actually, at that point, the insurance companies have got to say, okay, well, look, you have to have insurance and you've got to display it on your motorbike. And when you get that insurance, you've got to pay for the insurance of a passenger. The only problem is that let's face it, the border riders, they live from hand to mouth. Mm-hmm. They get money, they don't get a lot in a day. It may be enough to feed them for that day and look after their family. For them to pay out, let's say 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings, or even more, it's going to be very, very difficult for them. And let's hope it doesn't kill the industry.
Well, and I also want to hear from you, because I know you're a tax expert. How do you implement such, a policy in a highly unregulated market like the border industry?
Well, it will not be a walk in the park. It is hard, and as he has rightly put it, these are people who collect 50 shillings, maximum maybe 100. I don't know how many trips in a day. The day they are not well or something happens, they'll not be doing the business. So if you put a fixed kind of premium that they should pay without taking into consideration the other factors that are affecting the operations, I think it is, I would say it is not still well thought out. There needs to be a lot of consultation. There are many, they are all over. Today I might have a bike, and then my brother is like, give me the bike today, I ride. Who is insured? Who is the insured person here? How do you regulate this? Yeah.
And then the other thing, I mean, the insurance industry in Kenya, I mean, is highly risk averse. And we all know borders in this country. Do we have insurance companies who would be willing to offer premiums to borders?
Well, that's another aspect of it. Probably no. So the answer is, it's a thing which is very easy. It's rather like I do some work with a very, very clever man, Yide Kemoli. And he, in a meeting we are having with a particular company, said, well, okay, look, this is okay. This is according to the textbook. But now, what's going to happen in practice? And the answer is something very different. So how do you enforce this in practice? You got to have someone other than a textbook owner to actually think through the process to see how this is going to be done. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult to actually enforce that. So again, just as Honourable Rotich a number of years ago, he said, look, are we going to raise 6 billion shillings from a senator? He never raised that money because he killed the industry.
Finally, because we have to wind up, if you were Ukur Yatani, would you have done it differently?
Well, he did a very, very good job. First of all, I think he presented it much better than I would present it. And, because I would probably get fired up halfway through the budget and start speaking loudly. And someone recently said, I saw you on TV, but, you were very, very angry. But, put it this way, it's a very difficult job to do. Because, on the one hand, I think, many of the people in Parliament were saying this is a budget for the rich people. There was one of the MPs saying, look, this is a budget for the rich people. But, it isn't. In fact, it's very difficult to be totally balanced in that budget.
Very good. Anne,
yes.
Any other comments?
Oh, if I were Ukur, I would say he came out very well with a lot of assurance to the Kenyans that we are still on course on the Big Four agenda, and also assuring the Kenyans that there will be a way to tame the expenditure. Of course, that is on paper. We are waiting to see it being actualized. From a tax perspective, I stated earlier, well balanced, and we are hoping that the Kenya Revenue Authority will now leverage what they have right now, and we've seen them doing that in terms of leveraging technology and iTax to net more taxpayers.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anne, for joining us here, and of course, Jim McPhee.
Thank you for having us.
Very good. Anne Magondu is a senior manager tax at Ernst & Young, and Jim McPhee is a senior lecturer at Strathmore Business School, joining us tonight to help us make sense of Yatani's budget billions. You're watching the Prime Edition live from Broadcasting House. We are taking a short break, and thereafter we are back with more. Stay right here.
Log on to the KBC website at www.kbc.co.ke to get the latest breaking news, entertainment, sports, politics, lifestyle or business trends from Kenya and around the world. Never miss new episodes from your favorite TV shows, reruns and movies. Just stream online or watch live on your YouTube channel at KBC Channel 1 TV shows. For the day's biggest stories, trustworthy news and family entertainment, log on to KBC Channel 1. Watch what you want anytime, anywhere.
Kuna siku nimekuja nikakufangusha.
Ujai niangusha lakini niliacha
kufangusha. Yes. Kielele ni nini umeleta hapa kwa koti? Now I'm asking you. Huyo mtu alikupepa na potapota. Yuko wapi? Unaweza mtambua kwa mbele ya mahakama?
Siko mbele yangu, iko sura baya hiyo chura.
Sasa msiaseme sura kuliko kusema chura. Mkiangalia tu vizuri, leza pepa kunia kama hii.
Wewe iko ita nani kunia?
Maswali gani hii wewe?
Wewe ndio nakuuliza swali, wacha kuuliza swali. Wewe uko kochama ya potapota?
Abana.
Very good, abana, toka hapo. Fenda. Sasa na mnaifi. Mama ambaye niliangusha ni mama yako.
Si mama yangu.
Si mama yako. Kwa nini umeleta hiyo uchinga hapa at the same time unasema you will come to be a president of this nation? How? Inaingia namna gani?
Watu wana elimu lakini pia hawafanyii kazi elimu yao. Wanafanya kazi kwenye maslahi ambayo Allah alikataa. Wanafanya kazi kwa maslahi, hawafanyi kazi kwa kufikisha tauhidi kwa haki ya kuifikisha.
Biiznillah ta'ala, naomba tuwe wenye kupata hidayah na kufuata uongofu wa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ila yaumil qiyama ili tuweze kunufaika.
Malikin nas ilahin nas من شر الوسواس الخناس
فدقت قلبي نداك يا ربي ما لي سواك في ضعفي أترجاك ربنا يا هدينا.
Are you an aspiring candidate in the upcoming general elections? Do you want your agenda and manifesto to reach your voters effectively? At KBC, we have the most comprehensive and credible online platform that has profiles of all prospective candidates. Log on to www.kbc.co.ke/2022 aspirants and let Kenyans know more about you, your past achievements, your manifesto, and your development agenda once you get elected to office. What's more, the website is easy to navigate. We will create your profile, post pictures and short videos with your campaign messages at affordable hosting fees. Log on to www.kbc.co.ke/2022 aspirants today and establish your brand authority as we lead towards the forthcoming general elections.
Ili kupata mafuta kupanda kama skiza tune kwenye simu yako, bonyeza *811 397#.
Nashukuru serikali kwa kuongeza bei ya mafuta. Sasa niko kwa highway na hakuna traffic hata kidogo. Naomba serikali iendelee hivyo, tubaki tu watu ya gasla na heavy machine peke yake. Pia mimi naomba huyu serikali waseme kama gari yako ni below 3000 cc, gari yako
ili kupata mafuta kupanda kama skiza tune, bonyeza *811 397#. *811 397#.
As part of the government policy to achieve 10% forest cover, conservatory and protection of the ecosystem, Radio Ingo, in conjunction with Kakamega County, Kenya Forest Services and National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, will participate in tree planting at the Kakamega Forest on 8th of April 2022 and on 9th of April 2022. A church service will be held at St. Paul Muyenga Anglican Church of Kenya in Kakamega. Let's plant trees for a better tomorrow.
Welcome back. Now, this year's budget has been received with mixed reactions, with some leaders terming it as Mwananchi-focused budget, while others criticized some allocations, such as the 7 billion shillings for the COVID-19 vaccination.
Well, those in leadership positions had varying views on how the budget is likely to affect the cost of living, the public debt, and the vulnerable in society. Our reporter Hibak Said samples the views.
The bad, the critical, and the complimentary. They say opinions are a dime a dozen, but not so much when you're a decision maker or an opinion shaper. Here are your leaders' views on the recently released budget 2022-2023.
I have great concerns on some of the proposals made, especially in regard to the tax appeals tribunal, that if you have a case with them, you have to deposit 50% of what is in dispute with them, and that is definitely subject to abuse. I will have my say on the floor of the House because I do not support that at all.
When it is committed to the various departmental committees, you see changes, being undertaken in the various sectors.
The highlights today by CS Yatani were underwhelming and totally out of utopia.
As a woman, I'm very happy about the issue of the universal health care. The county that I represent, one greatest challenge that I have is health care.
When you propose to increase levies that you charge to our border and tuk-tuk drivers and riders, it will end up punishing the most vulnerable in our society today.
It will still be subjected to parliamentary scrutiny. Some of the policies which appear like to be unfavorable, we will also evaluate them and see, ensure we have a balance between what is good for the people and what can also help in revenue-raising measure.
What the minister has done is simply giving a proposal which is going to be ever looked at the committee level. There are things we are going to agree with. There are things certainly we are going to change.
Now we are already carrying this heavy burden of 9 trillion plus. So putting another 3-4 trillion shillings over and above what we are currently carrying will be too much of a burden to the Kenyan taxpayer.
I'm excited about the proposal to give farmers fertilizer subsidy. I think that is timely and that will greatly help in food production.
There is no way you can come and read that kind of budget to the Kenyan people who are undergoing the kind of problems they are going through.
Tussles, arguments, and assents. Your leaders, their opinions, and the reality of the matter. The new coin term, a Mwananchi budget. But how viable will this be? Hibak Said for Prime Edition.
Well, the proposal to earmark 2.7 billion shillings to subsidize fertilizer in the next financial year, in addition to another 3 billion shillings for fertilizer subsidy during the current planting season, was welcomed by Kenyans.
Those we sampled after the budget was read said the subsidy would help boost food production and keep food prices low. Others criticized the Yatani for not coming up strongly with job creation measures, especially for the youth. Our reporter Nduta Mukami now samples some of your views.
Tulikuwa tunatarajia tupate bajeti ambayo ni ya mwananchi, kiasi cha kwamba mwananchi atapata ufueni katika maisha ya kila siku, kisha juhudi ziwekwe katika kilimo, zile agricultural input kama fertilizer, kama mbegu na petroli, kwa sababu kilimo, unajua matingatinga wale katika bread basket wanatumia matingatinga ambayo inatumia petroli. Sasa hivi hii bajeti haikuangazia masuala ambayo kwangu mimi naona ni mazito katika taifa letu hivi.
na watu wengi hawajafurahia kwa sababu watu tayari wanaumia. Hakuna kazi kwa graduates, wanakaa tu na sisi nyumbani.
Oxygen has now been exempt from taxes. It means now in this era of COVID, those who are in the oxygen industry will be able now to either import, manufacture, whatever it is that they do without those worries of heavy taxation.
Wabunge wanaani msara nyingi sana. Hiyo msara yao tunataka wakatwe. Itiremuke ndio Mkenya aweze kuweza kupungukiwa hiyo nini budget yake aweze kurudi chini.
They wish that the budget could tackle the aspect of industrialization so that when industrialization could have given a bigger location, this would expand our industries and would pave a way for employment of our youth.
Initiating into food security, he should have invested in terms of irrigation, in terms of water, supplementary to the areas that are facing the drought issues, like northeastern. For now, we are seeing people suffering because there's no water. They can't access water. Yeah, and that was the main issue.
Now, the Budget Day 2022 was characterized by a number of formalities, as has been the case over the years.
Well, the famous briefcase displayed by Treasury Cabinet Secretary, synonymous with the day, alongside the attire by the CS and other government officials bearing the pocket flower. Nancy Okware now takes a look at the activities that characterize this year's budget presentation.
On Thursday, all eyes were on the National Treasury as Kenyans anticipated the presentation of the 2022-2023 legacy budget. Security at the historic building located along Harambee Avenue in Nairobi County was beefed up to the core. With decorations all over the entrance. Curious onlookers going as far as on top of buildings to get a glimpse of the proceedings.
I'm ready to die for freedom. I'm ready to die for my people. I'm ready to die for justice.
This man was, however, arrested for demonstrating outside the National Treasury, demanding for the prices of food and other basic commodities to be lowered. The vehicle to ferry the CS to Parliament building was on standby moments before the ceremony kicked off. And at exactly 2:33 p.m., the man of the hour, Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani, emerged from his office and onto the famous steps. Yatani, accompanied by officials from his ministry, such as Planning Principal Secretary Saitoti Torome and the Central Bank of Kenya Governor Patrick Njoroge. Yatani and the other government officials donning suits with pocket flowers, synonymous with the budget day. The CS displaying the iconic briefcase bearing the coat of arms and posing for a brief photo session. After this brief session, Yatani and his convoy proceeded to Parliament buildings in slow procession under very tight security.
And other invited guests, and notably the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, who are seated in the Speaker's row.
And whereas former Prime Minister Raila Odinga graced the occasion, members from the other side of the political divide seemed to have given it a wide berth, with a few of them in attendance. Nancy Okware, Prime Edition.
Well, the eagerly awaited budget was met with skeptical by Kenyans online who had hoped of price reduction on basic commodities.
The keyboard warriors took to the social media to express their views on the Ukur-Yatani budget and what it means to them. And based on the comments, many netizens were of the opinion that the budget didn't fully highlight their major concerns.
The legacy budget has been the talk of town. What's in that briefcase? Let's get to see some of their views on social media platforms.
Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur-Yatani and his briefcase were literally the most guarded items of the day. And this was confirmed after this young man was airlifted by the security officers simply for carrying a banner asking for reduction of food prices. Tweets immediately made rounds in the social media, with Kenyans showing concerns about the young man's whereabouts. Mark tweeted, "What's wrong with a man picketing against high cost of living? He is later arrested outside Treasury building." Now, Ukur-Yatani unknowingly might have rubbed some salt to an already bad wound when he said that in preparing this year's budget, we extensively consulted Kenyans. The comment, however, received massive hit on social media platforms as Kenyans wondered. When was this poll conducted? Others asking questions like, which Kenyans? And I was not consulted. Maxwell asks, ama nimehama nchi ingine? Is it safe to say majority of Kenyans are not consulted on matters directly affecting them?
The question that's begging is, did the budget bring a sigh of relief to Kenyans?
Perhaps the budget presentation was hard stuff to chew for some Kenyans. Jamal tweeted, "I don't see anything that will bring down the price of cooking oil and other items contemporary. Poor us, poor Kenyans. #budget KE. Importer says 3 trillion shillings sio shilingi tatu. Mtalipa tax mshangae." Blushing emojis. According to Muyu Mwananchi budget, #budget KE, I totally don't think so. 70% of Kenyans' problems and concerns have been ignored. The Treasury and the government lack touch with the people. Feels like a budget of guesswork. Well, at least Pablo is promising Kenyans 1 million each of... we don't know what exactly. Citing that today was a busy day and that the budget as stated is 3.3 trillion shillings. So tutagawa kila mtu. And when Yatani said locally assembled vehicles will be exempted from excise duty, at least locally self-made engineers will gain massively from this tweet from Charles, which says, "Ukistaajabu ya Homa Bay, then boom, Migori engineers happen." Indeed, tutastaajabu ya Wakenya.
One thing is clear. Kenyans wish for their voices to be heard and will express themselves in every manner. For Prime Edition, I am Teresa Mutai.
Man, oh man.
Tess, literally the voice of the people today.
And Tess Mutai managed to bring those sentiments perfectly well.
Moving on now, President Uhuru Kenyatta has underscored the government's commitment to improving the welfare of the country's security sector for better services to Kenyans.
While speaking Thursday when he commissioned an ultra-modern Kenya Defence Forces regional hospital in Meru County, President Kenyatta said the new hospital marks an important step in the healthcare reforms for the disciplined forces.
The state-of-the-art Isiolo Regional Hospital with a capacity of 105 beds is a level 4 facility that will address the healthcare needs of service personnel, their dependents and veterans in the Upper Eastern region, which includes Isiolo, Marsabit, Mandera, Wajir, Meru, Nanyuki and Samburu counties. While commissioning the facility at Isiolo Barracks in Meru County, President Kenyatta said the new hostel is in tandem with the government's agenda on universal health coverage.
Today is another bold step in the transformative journey that we have taken over 9 years. And over that time, we have undertaken modernization of our institutions of state, as well as our security organs, to an extent that has been unparalleled in our nation's history.
President Kenyatta noted that the hostel is also part of the modernization of institutions of state and security organs that his administration has been implementing since 2013.
At the center of the reforms that we have instituted has been our efforts to elevate the welfare of our personnel, especially in terms of health care. We have done this recognizing that the health of a security system is only as good as the health of its officers.
Besides healthcare, the president said the government has also boosted the welfare and social support of disciplined forces by securing the dignity of service members and their families through provision of a decent and affordable housing.
Our investments also in the social welfare of our disciplined personnel have seen us review remuneration upwards, expand allowances and benefits, improve housing, and introduce comprehensive health care and insurance.
We'll continue to give back by being mission ready always, and being able to serve in whatever capacity that you require us to do.
President Kenyatta was accompanied by Cabinet Secretaries Eugene Wamalwa, Mutahi Kagwe and Peter Munya, as well as Meru Governor Kiraitu Murungi.
Well, with the time coming to 10:30, it is time now to wrap up this bulletin.
The legacy budget.
Definitely. I mean, from Nairobi to Mombasa to Kisumu, we've taken you all the places, and of course, heard from Kenyans on what they feel about this budget. And of course, we have heard it from them, from Kenyans in the street to Kenyans in the Twitter space. We've managed to bring you all the comments, and time now for us to wrap up the bulletin tonight. Thank you so very much indeed for your time this evening. We look forward for another time with you again, definitely. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Have yourself a good night.
From me and the rest of the team, have a good night.
I'm very much comfortable.
Vitimbi Jumatatu hii. Jumuika nasi siku ya Jumatatu ili upate uhondo kamili kwenye vitimbi. Hiyo basi usikose burudani tosha kila siku ya Jumanne hadi Alhamisi saa 1:35 katika tamthilia ya Maza.
Kubuniwa kwa ajenda 4 kuu na Rais Uhuru Kenyatta kumeifanya nchi ikashuhudia maendeleo kwa kasi zaidi.
This is an agenda that has a single aim: to improve the lives of Kenyans by ensuring that all of us are food secure, that we have a decent roof over our heads, and that everyone has access to affordable health care, and that more jobs are created in the manufacturing sector.
Kaunti ya jiji la Nakuru imesonga mbele kwa miradi mbalimbali inayotagusana na the Big Four, zikiwemo afya, ujenzi, uzalishaji na sekta ya uchukuzi.
Jumapili hii kwenye runinga ya KBC, ungana naye Askofu Michael Wanderi wa kanisa la Christian Foundation Fellowship Kiambu kuanzia saa 1 hadi saa 2 asubuhi.
Ningetaka nikwambie, our Jehovah God, because the Bible says he is the same yesterday, today and forevermore. He is able to take you to a place of abundance. He is able to take you to Rehoboth in the name of Jesus Christ.
Kipindi ni neno la neema, ukiletewa naye Askofu Michael Wanderi wa kanisa la Christian Foundation Fellowship Kiambu. Usikose.